Roughly 10,000 years ago, during the dawn of the Neolithic Revolution, humanity made what was arguably the biggest gamble in our species' history. We stopped wandering around as mobile hunter-gatherers, invented agriculture, and built permanent settlements to store massive piles of grain. And almost overnight, we stumbled right into a catastrophic ecological crisis of our own making. Rodents, millions upon millions of them. Mice and rats swarmed our early villages, devouring stored wheat, contaminating drinking water, and spreading deadly pathogens. Agriculture, the very invention that was supposed to secure humanity's future, was on the verge of collapsing under the weight of a vermin epidemic. And then, stepping quietly out of the arid scrubland of the Near East, a solitary, 8-pound killing machine strolled into town. It didn't ask for permission. It didn't care about human companionship. It sought a target-rich environment, cracked its knuckles, and went to work. Fast forward 10 millennia to the modern day, and that relentless desert predator has successfully negotiated the single greatest deal in animal history. It lives rent-free in a temperature-controlled palace. It demands premium salmon pâté, served in a porcelain dish. It sleeps 16 hours a day and occasionally knocks a glass off your kitchen counter while locking eye contact with you, just to remind you who actually runs the house. How on earth did an obligate carnivore with zero biological drive to please humans transform into a creature we spend billions of dollars feeding every single year? The answer isn't what you were taught in school. Humans didn't conquer or tame cats. The reality is far stranger. Cats are the only animal on Earth that looked at human civilization, evaluated our weaknesses, and domesticated themselves on their own terms. When we talk about animal domestication, we usually think of control and dominance. We put bits and reins on horses so we could ride them in a battle. We built wooden pens around sheep and goats to harvest their wool and meat. We bred cows to produce absurd amounts of milk. And, as we know from the story of dogs, we selectively bred wolves over thousands of years to create loyal, obedient companions that follow our every command. So it's natural to assume that some prehistoric farmer stumbled across a den of wild kittens, brought them into his hut, and trained them to guard the village grain. It's a great story. It's also completely absurd, because here's what anyone who has ever owned a cat or worked with wild animals will tell you. Cats are biologically incapable of being forced into submission. The direct ancestor of all domestic cats is Felis libica, the African wildcat. Unlike gray wolves, which are highly social pack animals engineered by evolution to respect an alpha leader and work as a team, wildcats are aggressively solitary creatures. They don't have a pack hierarchy. They don't look for a leader. They territory mark their space, hunt alone, and view literally every other living creature as either food, a rival, or a threat. If an ancient human had tried to capture an adult African wildcat and force it into domestic life, they wouldn't have gained a helpful pet. They would have gained a permanent emergency room visit. Ancient humans were brilliant survivalists. They weren't wasting precious time and energy trying to hand-rear an untrainable desert predator on the off chance it might learn to love them. So if we didn't tame them, how did a solitary killer end up purring on your chest while you watch TV? To understand how cats moved in, you have to look at the world through the eyes of an opportunistic hunter 10,000 years ago. When humans established the first farming villages in regions like the Fertile Crescent and Ancient Cyprus, we created something the natural world had never seen before: an artificial, hyper-dense concentration of prey. Our grain silos were basically an all-you-can-eat, 24/7 buffet for rodents. And wherever rodents went, predators were sure to follow. Now, most wildcats kept their distance. To a wild animal, a human settlement was a terrifying place full of loud noises, strange smells, smoke, and unpredictable bipedal apes holding sharp sticks. Most wildcats stayed out in the desert, working hard for every single mouse they caught. But within any wild population, there is genetic variation. A small percentage of African wildcats carried genetic mutations that resulted in slightly lower adrenaline production and a reduced fear response. These specific cats weren't necessarily friendlier. They were just brave enough and tolerant enough to creep into human villages under the cover of night to exploit the massive mouse population. And this is where the evolutionary magic happened. While humans were busy farming, these bold, low-anxiety wildcats were getting fat on village mice. Free, easy calories mean higher survival rates. Higher survival rates mean more litter cycles. And more litters mean more kittens inheriting those exact same tolerant of humans genes. The humans, for their part, quickly realized what was happening. They saw these sleek little desert hunters patrolling their grain stores, eradicating the pests that threatened their food supply, and doing it all without asking for a single thing in return. It was the ultimate unwritten contract in ecological history. You kill the things eating our food, and we won't throw spears at you. Humans didn't build cages for cats. We just opened the door and let them do what they were born to do. Now, tolerating a predator in your grain barn is one thing. Allowing that predator to move into your house, sleep on your furniture, and manipulate your emotions is something else entirely. How do cats bridge that gap? By accidentally developing some of the most sophisticated biohacks in the animal kingdom. Let's start with the meow. In the wild, adult cats almost never meow at each other. Go watch wildcats or feral colonies. They communicate almost entirely through scent marking, facial expressions, and high-pitched vocalizations like hissing or growling. Meowing is an acoustic signal used exclusively by kittens to get their mother's attention when they are cold or hungry. Once a wildcat grows up, it stops meowing forever. So why does your adult house cat look you dead in the eye and meow at 6 a.m.? Because domestic cats realize that humans don't communicate via scent or tail flicks. We communicate through sound. Over generations of living alongside us, cats reactivated their juvenile kitten vocalizations specifically for human ears. It gets wilder. Acoustic researchers have analyzed the specific frequency profile of a cat's solicitation meow, the noise they make when asking for food. They discovered that cats embed a subtle, high-frequency sound inside their purr that closely matches the exact acoustic frequency of a crying human infant, around 220 to 500 hertz. Your human brain is hardwired by millions of years of mammalian evolution to react to an infant's cry with immediate anxiety, empathy, and an overwhelming urge to nurture. When a cat meows for breakfast, they aren't just making a sound. They're triggering an ancient biological emergency code hidden deep inside your nervous system. You think you're choosing to feed your cat out of love. In reality, your cat is executing an acoustic override on your brain chemistry. This psychological control was so comprehensive that human civilization didn't just learn to live with cats. We literally started worshiping them. Nowhere was this more apparent than in ancient Egypt. As Egypt built its empire on the massive agricultural output of the Nile Delta, cats transitioned from practical farm workers to sacred cultural icons. The Egyptians observed the cat's uncanny agility, lightning-fast instincts, and ability to slay venomous cobras alongside mice, and they concluded that these animals were touched by the divine. They created the goddess Batet, depicted as a fierce lioness in early history and later as a graceful woman with the head of a domestic cat. Batet was the guardian of the home, protector of women and children, and the defender of the home against evil spirits and disease. The Egyptians took cat protection to extreme lengths. Harming a cat, even accidentally, was a crime punishable by death. Historical accounts by the Greek historian Diodorus Siculus recall a Roman soldier in Egypt who accidentally killed a cat. Despite the danger of provoking a war with Rome, an enraged Egyptian mob lynched the soldier on the spot. When a family cat died of natural causes in Egypt, the entire household would shave off their eyebrows as a formal sign of deep mourning. The cat's body would be carefully embalmed, wrapped in fine linen, and buried in vast royal cat cemeteries alongside tiny bronze statues and saucers of milk for the afterlife. In fact, during the Battle of Pelusium in 525 BCE, the invading Persian king Cambyses too used the Egyptian devotion to cats as a military tactic. According to legend, Persian soldiers painted images of cats on their shields and released hundreds of actual cats onto the front lines. The Egyptian troops, terrified of hurting the sacred animals, surrendered the city without firing a single arrow. Humans had built empires, mastered bronze work, and constructed the pyramids, and yet a tiny desert feline had managed to render an entire superpower completely powerless. Here is the most fascinating biological difference between dogs and cats, and it's something most people completely overlook. If you take a Great Dane and a Chihuahua, both are domestic dogs, but thousands of years of human selective breeding have radically transformed their bones, brains, teeth, digestive tracts, and temperaments away from their wild wolf ancestors. If you take a domestic house cat and put its DNA next to a wild African desert cat, scientists have a hard time finding any major structural differences. Genetically speaking, house cats are barely domesticated. Their digestive systems are still those of strict, obligate carnivores designed to process raw meat. Their eyes still retain specialized tapetum lucidum layers that amplify ambient night vision by 6 times compared to humans. Their ears are still controlled by 32 individual muscles that can rotate 180 degrees independently to track the high-pitched squeaks of hidden prey. When a dog plays fetch with you, it's engaging in a modified pack-hunting behavior designed to cooperate with a human leader. When your house cat attacks a feather toy or pounces on a laser, it isn't playing a game with you. It is executing an unmodified, lethal predatory hunting sequence that has remained virtually unchanged for millions of years. Cats didn't change who they were to fit into our human world. They didn't adapt their biology to please us. They simply realized that if they tolerated our presence and allowed us to pet them occasionally, we would provide them with heated shelter, unlimited protection, and an endless food supply, all while letting them remain absolute wild killers at heart. So what does this mean for us today? We often joke about cats taking over the internet, dominating social media algorithms, and running our households. But when you step back and look at the deep history of human civilization, the relationship between humans and cats is one of the most successful ecological partnerships ever forged. Without cats protecting our grain stores 10,000 years ago, early agricultural settlements might have been wiped out by disease and famine. Without cats patrolling maritime ships during the Age of Discovery, rodent-borne plagues would have decimated crews before they ever reached new continents. We didn't tame cats. We built a world, filled it with food and resources, and cats looked at our work and said, "Yeah, this will do nicely." So the next time your cat ignores you when you call its name, stares into an empty corner like it sees a ghost, or curls up at the foot of your bed and starts purring, just remember, you aren't looking at a trained, submissive working animal. You're looking at an ancient desert apex predator that looked at human civilization 10,000 years ago, ran the numbers, hacked our psychology, and decided to move in. It wasn't a surrender. It was a hostile takeover. And 10,000 years later, they're still running the show.